Tonight on Business Live, government intends to spend 226.7 billion next year.
Mr. Speaker, total expenditure is projected at 226.7 billion, 21.6% of GDP.
Also in this bulletin, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announces some 8 tax reliefs for businesses aimed at helping the private sector thrive.
I assure this august House that we have heard, we believe in lower taxes as a government for industry, and we are working others aggressively with the GRA and to be cemented with the Standing Committee of the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue.
We've got reactions from the business community as well as a tax expert on that. And on the Joy Business Van, Dr. Kwabena Hassan is on a mission to get Ghanaian mothers patronize locally produced baby cereal. The Joy Business Van tracks how well it's doing. We've got details of these plus many more coming your way all in a moment. Please stay. Grateful for your company. I am Pius Kojo Baka. Let's now look at our stories. And government is hoping to spend a total of 226.7 billion cedis in 2024. This will represent 21.6% of the GDP. Speaking in Parliament during the 2024 budget presentation a while ago, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta explained that the projection reflects a reduction of 6.1 percentage points of GDP in total expenditures relative to the outturn in 2022.
Mr. Speaker, total expenditure is projected at 226.7 billion, 21.6% of GDP. This projection reflects a reduction of 6.1 percentage points of GDP in total expenditure commitment basis compared to the outturn in 2022. This large decrease comes from the combination of fiscal consolidation efforts of 4.9 percentage points of GDP, reflecting an adjustment in revenue by 1.1 percentage point and primary expenditure by 3.9 percentage points of GDP.
Touching on macroeconomic targets, it said the government is now targeting an overall real GDP growth of 2.8% in 2023.
Mr. Speaker, based on the overall macroeconomic objectives and the medium-term targets, the following macroeconomic targets are set for the 2024 fiscal year. Overall real GDP growth of at least 2.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of at least 2.1%, end period inflation rate of 5.0%, primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus of 0.5% of GDP, and gross international reserve to cover not less than 3 months of imports. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 and medium-term fiscal framework has been prepared in line with the objectives and policy priorities of a 3-year IMF-supported PCPEC program. The primary balance on commitment basis is the fiscal anchor we are using to assess our fiscal effort.
Now, the Finance Minister also announced some 8 tax reliefs aimed at helping the private sector.
Mr. Speaker, tax reliefs. Our approach to tax policy since 2017 was to give significant relief to the private sector until expenditure pressures from 2020 required a more aggressive approach. It is important to note that in the short term, fiscal sustainability requires that we improve our tax ratios significantly, otherwise our long-term competitiveness will be eroded. As we all know, our country's 13% tax to GDP ratio is far below our peers. Our target is 18 to 20%, and we are on course with 16% hoping to be achieved this year. In that regard, it is difficult to implement all the structural reforms and tax reliefs needed to immediately lower and/or eliminate certain tax handles. However, I assure this august House that we have heard, we believe in lower taxes as a government for industry, and we are working at this aggressively with the GRA and to be cemented with the Standing Committee of the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue.
All right, so let's interrogate these figures better and get on Zoom and speak to Professor Lord Mensah on the back of this, as presented by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Thanks so much, sir, for joining me on Business Live. Now, your initial thoughts about how much government is hoping to spend in 2024. We're learning some 226.7 billion cedis, representing about 21.6% of GDP.
Yes, can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, so good evening to our viewers. Clearly, yes, government intention to spend did not grow that much, but then the revenue that they projected seemed to be so high, which has built up into, a deficit of about, 60.1 billion, Ghana cedis. And I asked myself, how are we going to finance, this, a budget deficit? Because that is where, the problem is. At the end of the day, once the budget is being read, you just have to look at the expenditure in excess of the revenue that government intends to generate. The numbers have been jumped, all right, but the margins of revenue wasn't, the margins on the expenditure jump wasn't the same as that of the, revenue. So you ask yourself, with the kind of economy we find ourselves in, how is government going to finance this huge deficit that has been created? And that should be a cause to worry, in a sense that if I look at the somewhere table 11, there's an indication of, financing domestic. I mean, all the budget deficit. And you ask yourself, how is this going to bring interest rate down? A situation where we have been drumming of crowding out effects, over the past, few months. And as far as that your financing sources have been blocked, I was expecting a budget that will have almost close, budget deficit, for which, the IMF proposed about 0%, budget deficit. What we've done well is an improvement on the previous year's budget deficit. But as far as your financing sources are limited, you don't create too much avenue for financing. 60.1 billion. You're asking yourself, how are we going to finance this, from the domestic market? So,
and that, of course, leads me to my next question, whether the budget really gives an indication that gradually we are overcoming the economic challenges and thus turned the corner, as been alluded by the Finance Minister. Do you think so? In a minute.
Well, the term turning the corner, I think is too early. From where I sit, I won't use that term when, inflation is above, interest on investment. If inflation is above interest on investment, then it means real value of investment is negative. So at what point did we turn the corner? We can only turn the corner when, per his projections, you could see we are targeting inflation somewhere around, 15% by the end of 2024. At the same time, average interest rate in the monetary policy rate in the economy, we are targeting somewhere 15% as well by the end of 2024. That is when we can comfortably say that we've turned the corner, because at that point, real value on investment is almost zero. And that is, going into the positive side. So looking at the financing bit, per my projections, I don't think interest rate structures are going to come down any moment from now. And it's a cause to worry in an economy of that sort. Looking at the proposals on projects that have been lined out, clearly you could see government wants to still hold on to business. without, looking into the situation for the economy to be transferred to the private sector.
All right.
The crowding out effect still lingers on if you look into the budget clearly. And I don't foresee any moment from now that interest rates are going to come down on the market.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Lord Mensah, for your input this very hour. We are indeed grateful to you. Let's also interrogate the tax bid about the 2024 budget. Helping us to do so is a tax analyst, Gordon Dade, Associate Director of Tax at KPMG for more. And thanks so much, sir, for joining me on Business Live. How relevant are these 8 taxes to the business communities and, of course, individuals, you would say?
Thank you, Pius. I also add my voice to what Prof. Lord said. To our viewers, thank you for making time to view this evening. Yes, just to say that, look, this relief that government has actually introduced or announced today is not really a departure from what we saw in our pre-budget survey. So during our pre-budget survey, before this budget, we did some survey where we interviewed a number of businesses and asked them some of the proposals and tax initiatives they want government to prioritize in 2024. And it was quite clear that businesses are not looking for government to introduce new taxes, but rather to, maybe review some of the policies that we have. And we've seen that in this budget, as you've already said, 8 tax reliefs have been announced. One of such reliefs for me, which is very important, is the one that we are extending the tax exemption for the African prints.
Okay.
Where once African prints, you are not going to pay taxes and VAT on them in the local market. For me, I think that is very important. When you look at the U.S. economy, for instance, in the 17th century, where Sir Isaac Singer transformed that economy even through the garment industry alone. So for me, I think the garment industry is very important. We need to really pay special attention to that side. Maybe in future, we should even look at how to give a permanent exemption to players in that sector and how to spare growth through that exemption. Also, if you look at the minimum wage side, even for individuals, there's some also for minimum wage. And I believe that even as employees will see some little relief when it comes to their tax side. So broadly, I see the tax reliefs in 3 categories. One that is going to boost production from the side of the release for businesses. Ones that are going to look at the sustainability issues that we are experiencing. Globally, there's a lot of talk about sustainability and ESG. And if you look at some of the reliefs that we are going to have for the motor vehicle industry, for example, they talk about the release for SKD and then the CKD, where the semi-knockdown vehicles, once you import them, there's that relief or exemption on the import duties. And I think that is very important because we need to look at how we can operate sustainably as a country, how to move away from all the carbon emissions and things that we are seeing. So those are very good policies. And also on the plastic side, government is intending to review some of the taxes there. And that will help us to manage some of the impact of the environmental issues on our economy. And so for me, the one that is also important is also the informal sector, where government is looking at also restructuring that side and also bringing some simplified taxation for that side. We've always been talking about how to widen the tax net, and the informal sector is one area that we have to pay attention to. So I'm quite happy that government is going to look at that side, but we'll have to wait to see what the tax returns and what the reforms are going to be come 2024.
Indeed, we have to look at that space as well. But in a minute, if you can do that for me, I will be really appreciative of that. And from what you said, do you think government could have, introduced more tax reliefs, looking at the list of tax exemptions the business community presented to the finance ministry?
Yeah, so as Prof. Lord mentioned earlier, if you look at government expenditure, that's about 227 billion. And if you look at the revenue target, it's actually lower. So although businesses are calling for more tax reliefs or more tax exemptions, you also have to look at your expenditure profile and see whether if you continue to reduce the taxes, whether you are going to get the revenues you need to get, for your planned projects in 2024. So again, people expected some of those tax reliefs, but I think government has also shown some sign of confidence by giving 8. Let's wait to see what will happen next year, whether some new ones will come.
All right.
Maybe in the
Thank you very much, Gordon Dade. He's an Associate Director Tax at KPMG, speaking to us there on the tax bit. Of course, let's now engage the business community who happens to benefit directly when it comes to tax reliefs. And joining us via Zoom as well is the President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, Dr. Joseph Obeng, for more on that. Thanks so much, sir, for joining me as well on Business Live. Your impression about the budget and some tax reliefs granted, are you satisfied? Dr. Obeng, I'm asking you whether you are satisfied with the 8 new tax reliefs granted by the Finance Minister.
Our main demands as traders were not met. As you know that we were so clear with our demands from the trading community. We're demanding that COVID levy should be removed. We're demanding that the special import levy also be removed. And then we're demanding also that the VAT as it is now should be restructured to ensure conducive operation by the business community. And all these were not met, even though we admit that there have been tax reliefs for some industry players in the car industry, that's the electric assembling cars here, and then local vehicle manufacturers, African print manufacturers, sanitary pad manufacturers, and agric machinery, which are all very good for a section of the industry. But for the trading sector, and the fact that we have been complaining about high cost of doing business, our inability to clear our goods from the port, our inability to even comply with the VAT and all that were not met.
All right. So what then does that mean to you going forward? Because nothing can be done about it, really.
So it means that the status quo still remains.
What does that mean?
And that, the same old problem persists, and that we have to find a way to contend with. We still have to contend with utility bills. It was also not mentioned that we are finding a way to reduce it. So all the major problems confronting traders are still remain. The challenges that we are going to have with GRA concerning compliance of the VAT is going to even persist. And it means that for us, the trading community, the importing community, we did not have much. Yeah, we did not, our expectations were not met. But I've told you also that we recognize and appreciate the fact that some industry players also got some reliefs, especially those in the agri sector. The agri manufacturing machinery is going to help all of us in terms of food productivity. Then the sanitary pad production is also going to be enhanced. So local manufacturing is going to have some advantage, as well as our women food, who are going to also have advantage in the price. If only the price it will transfer to downward prices for them, then it's also going to help. The car industry, especially the locally manufactured, are still having the advantage of some reliefs. And then those who are printing, having the African print and all that. So at least some industry players have also gotten some respite of tax relief. And that is welcome for them. But for us, the traders, the high cost of doing business at the port, the extortive rates of the clearance of goods, the many cost items at the port still remain. And so we'll go ahead and then confront the issues as they unfold.
All right. Thank you very much, President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, Dr. Joseph Obeng, for your time this very on Business Live. You're still watching Business Live. We've got the business van for you after this break. Thanks for watching Business Live. I am Pius Kojobaka.